Oh my goodness. Sisters Expanded Probe Launcher, 24 Sisters Core Scanner Probes, 24 Sisters Combat Scanner Probes, Coprocessor 2, Ship Scanner 2, 2 Inertial Stabilizer 2s, and a Covert Ops Cloaking Device. Wow. Did like everything drop? Everything of interest dropped. Wow. Thank you, Furion. You have made this long, painful wait feel entirely worthwhile. Oh. Oh. It's funny, I was thinking that we might want to buy a combat probe blueprint eventually and an expanded probe launcher blueprint eventually, because we don't have either. And there have been a couple of times when I've kind of wished we had them. And then 2 more inertial stabilizer 2s, and basically what I'm hoping is a lifetime supply of Sisters Core Scanner Probes. We already have 16. We have 40 Sisters Core Scanner Probes now. I can't get over this. This is incredible. But this Covert Ops Cloaking Device is gonna live rent-free in my mind until I figure out what I'm gonna do about it. This is Bill. Bill wants to build a Cynabal and join the Angel Cartel cause in Zarzak, but he's not making it easy on himself. Oh, Torrance. I'm so proud of you. Whatever happens now, you will go to Valhalla. I'm gonna keep camping this bubble. See if we get a couple more kills. But if we catch a Loki, and Torrance gets immediately blown to smithereens, this outing has been the biggest possible success. Even then. Wow. Torrance. Look at this. 5 kill marks on Torrance the Thrasher. Champion of level 2 missions, champion of level 3 missions, an absolute killer. What a ship. In Caller. Kind of a gross name. Member of Pandemic Horde. Flying a Synesis. He's landing on us. Now, if this is a combat Synesis, we're screwed. But the average Synesis that you find in Nullsec warping gate to gate is actually a cargo ship. He's not shooting back yet. Oh, he's got newts on us. We want to turn off our own newts. We don't want to newt ourselves out. Turn off the micro warp drive. Stop heating the gun so we don't burn them out. Oh. Oh. Oh, that hurts. That hurts. That hurts my soul. We still had him scrammed, but he pulled out of the bubble. He must have activated a warp core stabilizer, and he was able to warp off. 89% damage on the autocannons. Realistically, there's probably nothing we could have done there to secure that kill. Heating one more cycle could very well have been the end of us. That really hurts. I've talked a lot about how no matter how much PvP experience you have, you'll still make mistakes sometimes. And there have been some fights where I made mistakes in this channel where I could have won the fight if I had done things a little bit differently. That's not at all uncommon. But what also happens is sometimes you do everything exactly right and you still don't get the kill. I'm pretty sure against that Synesis, I really did do everything right. And nonetheless, he got away in structure, one volley away from death. We'll never know what that travel Synesis was carrying. I've got some thoughts in my mind it was carrying everything I could possibly want. A hold full of refits for projectile and blaster ships, Tech 2 autocannons, Tech 2 blasters, right? Of course. Of course. It's exactly what was in there. Okay. I've docked back up to repair Torrents after that Synesis debacle, and I want to talk in a little bit more depth about what the loot from the anathema actually means for us, because some of these modules are kind of like ciphers in terms of how they're going to potentially affect our run. Obviously, inertial stabilizers we'll make use of. We already have a few and they've been great for us. And obviously, the Sisters Core scanner probes, the Sisters Combat scanner probes, the Sisters Probe Launcher, and the scan arrays, those will all just go on our probe and we'll be very happy to have them. In fact, that would be enough. That would be enough for me to be thrilled. But that leaves a few things that it's less clear what we do with. The Interdiction Nullifier, we could put on a wreath to make it immune to bubbles, which could be useful for moving valuable things out of Thera, although honestly we've mostly been using Atrons for transporting high value items, and I think that's probably safer still. But we're not mad. We're not mad about having Interdiction Nullifier. The Covert Ops cloaking device is going to be a bit of a bugbear for us. The problem is that it can only go on certain ships, and those ships are not easy to build. In order to use it, we're going to need to either build a Covert Ops frigate, an Expedition frigate, or an Astro. Now, we do have an Astro blueprint sitting out in LowSec, but I am still not thrilled about building it. That would be a huge side quest, and I'm not convinced it's going to add enough capability for it to be worth the amount of effort it's going to take. I'm not entirely writing it off, but I want to talk about something else we could potentially do with the Covert Ops cloaking device. Tech 2 items can be reprocessed. And when you reprocess them, you get, of course, all of these conventional minerals, you get the planetary interaction commodities that are used in building them, but you also get back some of the specialized T2 components. These are the Tech 2 components that you usually have to build by reacting moon goo into intermediary compounds and then reacting those compounds again into things like graviton pulse generators or photon microprocessors. It is getting these construction components in the first place that mostly makes T2 manufacturing so difficult. So if we're not going to use the Covert Ops cloak, we could reprocess it and we could use these Tech 2 components to build some other Tech 2 module, bypassing the difficult part of Tech 2 manufacturing. Now, of course, there are a lot of different kinds of Tech 2 construction components, but one thing that's interesting is that modules that are very similar in class usually have the same component requirements. So a Covert Ops cloaking device can only go on a handful of ships, but an improved cloaking device 2 can go on almost any ship, and the Tech 2 components that it needs are identical. In fact, reprocessing this one Covert Ops cloak gives us almost everything we need to build an improved cloaking device 2. So that's interesting. The same thing also holds for Tech 2 modules we're unlikely to ever use, like the Coprocessor 2 and the Ship Scanner. If we reprocess them, we'll get oscillator capacitor units, we'll get nanoelectrical microprocessors, and we'll get more photon microprocessors. And what's also worth noting is that these Tech 2 components can also be reprocessed down into their component parts, like tungsten carbide, phenolic composites, nanotransistors, terahertz materials. These are the things that you actually do react out of the moon goo before you build these components. So by reprocessing a bunch of Tech 2 modules, we could potentially build up a stock of these reprocessed intermediary Tech 2 materials and use them to build the Tech 2 modules that we really want. Which got me thinking, if we are going to build Tech 2 modules in this run, it's going to be a big side quest. But it, unlike the Astro, might be worth it. But if we were going to do that, what modules would we want to build? So for most modules that you put on your ship, there actually is a pretty good case for using meta. Or if you want to level up from meta, there's a pretty good case for using faction modules or DED modules, which we can get from anomaly and signature drops. Tech 2 modules like Tech 2 shield extenders or Tech 2 afterburners are very good, but the meta and faction mods actually have some pretty big advantages as well. But the one thing that goes on almost every ship we fly where there's a big gulf between the meta and the Tech 2 in capability is guns. I would love nothing more than to have Tech 2 autocannons to put on Torrance the Thrasher. No wait, I would love one thing more than having Tech 2 autocannons to put on Torrance the Thrasher, and that would be having Tech 2 autocannons, or artillery maybe, to put on the Cynabal we eventually build. It would make me so happy to fly our Cynabal to Zarzak with Tech 2 guns on it. The letter of the challenge doesn't require the Cynabal be fit at all. An empty hull or a Cynabal with small blasters on it would tick that box, but the spirit of the challenge certainly does call for a combat-capable Cynabal. And Tech 2 guns are going to be part of pretty much every Cynabal build that takes itself seriously. Now, conveniently, I did a little looking into what's involved in building Tech 2 medium projectile weapons, and noticed that in fact, the build list is exactly the same as it is for Tech 2 small projectile weapons. So if we can set ourselves up to build Tech 2 medium autocannons or artillery, we can also build Tech 2 small autocannons or artillery for Torrance. So if we do build Tech 2, this is what we're doing. We're building Tech 2 projectile weapons. So let's talk about what that would entail. In order to build a Tech 2 projectile weapon, this is the list of materials you're going to need, although the quantity will vary depending on the size and type. So pursuing this crazy dream will require that we get Tech 1 variants of the weapon that we want to build. That's fine. We can buy the BPO, we build them out of conventional minerals. It will require that we get RAM weapon techs. That's also fine. We already have the BPO, we needed it to build our Tech 2 rig, and you build them out of conventional minerals. It will require that we have robotics, which is also fine. We make robotics in planetary industry. I mean, in fact, we already have a whole bunch of extra robotics stashed back in Minar. It will require morphite, which is a bit of a pain because you can't mine it with a conventional mining laser, but we can build a deep core mining laser, or for that matter, if we reprocess enough Tech 2 modules, we'll just get morphite from the reprocessing. And the last thing your Tech 2 projectile weapons will require is a thermonuclear trigger unit. And this is where things get messy, because the thermonuclear trigger unit is the sole Tech 2 component used in the construction of these weapons. And it itself has a crazy bill of materials. Building a thermonuclear trigger unit requires fernite carbide, polarides, and hypersynaptic fibers, each of which is itself a Tech 2 component made from reactions out of intermediary compounds which are reacted out of moongoo minerals. So when we fully expand the build cost, it looks like this. So really, what stops us from building a thermonuclear trigger unit is having all of this moongoo. That's a bunch of different moons we would have to mine. This is the basic framework of pretty much all Tech 2 module manufacture. You're going to need about a dozen different types of moongoo, which you'll mix together through a series of reactions before finally building your advanced Tech 2 components. And then once you've got those components, you will combine those with a Tech 1 module, some morphite, maybe some PI, and then bam, Tech 2 module. Of course, you also have to invent the blueprint before you can even start that process. It's worth noting that each one of these reaction steps is going to require fuel blocks. So if you don't have a fuel block supply already running, then you're going to need to source them as well. And also, each one of these 10 different reaction formulas is going to cost 10 million ISK from NPCs. So getting the manufacturing process up and running for a single type of Tech 2 module is going to cost you 100 million ISK minimum. And then if you want to build a different type of Tech 2 module, it's possible it could require 10 entirely different reaction formulas. The supply chain and manufacturing process for Tech 2 modules really does require a certain amount of specialization. We may build Tech 2 guns, but that won't necessarily mean that we're set up to start building the whole range of Tech 2 modules. But I started all this talking about how we can reprocess Tech 2 modules and get out their Tech 2 components. Now, the Tech 2 modules that we looted from that anathema don't really give us the materials that we need in significant quantities, But once I started thinking about this plan last night while I was lying in bed, I started wondering where else we might get them from. And so this morning I did a pretty thorough assay of my assets, and I found something very interesting. We have 35 spatial attunement units. They drop in relic and data sites, and they're used primarily to build these scan arrays in their Tech 2 variants. But the spatial attunement units can also be reprocessed, and they give hyperkinetic fibers and ferrite carbide. And we have a bunch of these. With spatial attunement units as a source of those two Tech 2 materials, the only Tech 2 material we would actually have to react up from scrap is the fulleриdes, which means the list of moon goo that we need actually looks like this. So one of those intermediary compounds required to build the fulleриdes is carbon polymers, which only requires the hydrocarbons and silicates, which we can get from so many moons. And also, carbon polymers is a reaction formula that we were going to buy to build our Cynabal anyways. The other intermediary compound required to build fulleриdes is platinum teknite. Platinum teknite requires two types of moon goo to build: platinum, of which we've thoughtfully already stashed over 700 in Albres, and technetium, which we haven't yet found. So I'm doing it. I'm officially adding build Tech 2 medium projectile weapons to our list of goals. And in order to do that, we're going to need to get our hands on some more spatial attunement units. We're going to need to get our hands on some more morphite, either by mining it or reprocessing Tech 2 modules. And we're going to need to find some technetium, unless we're fortunate enough to loot Tech 2 modules that refine into fulleриdes. This is not a side quest. This is a new part of the main quest. We are going to fly into Zarzak in a Cynabal with Tech 2 guns, or at least Tech 2 gun, blazing. Bam, bam, bam. That's right. What have I gotten myself into? The Crow is in my bubble, and I'm not, because there was a Products Navy I was concerned about. Crow has me tackled. So I built 3 bubbles out here in Curse. The first was blown up by a Loki last episode, and the second was blown up just now by a meanie from NC Dot and a Products Navy issue. But Torrance the Thrasher is still standing. Look at those kill marks. So I'm back here in KTAC Q, picking up my third and final mobile small warp disruptor. I'm going to head back out and ride that bubble until either the final bubble or Torrance himself meets their end. And then it will be time to start planning our triumphant return to Thera, where we'll figure out what the next stage of this adventure looks like. Oh, a fleet is coming through. I have a bad feeling about what this means for my bubble if they landed it. They've all landed in my bubble. The whole fleet landed in my bubble. Yeah, I saw that coming. I can hardly blame them. Pretty embarrassing to have your battleships and T2 logistics and T2 assault cruisers and battle cruisers all caught by a single small bubble manned by a lone Thrasher. Happy travels, Pandemic Horde. I guess we're done with our bubble camping out here in Curse. So maybe I spoke too soon. Someone else has just abandoned a bubble here in Hammond. So maybe I'll just say, sorry you forgot your bubble. My bubble now. It works just the same no matter who anchored it. Uh-oh. Well, that's bad news. This person who just warped through was not in local. Time to log off and reset my chat connection. Guys, I have some heartbreaking news. I was sitting here in Hemen, camping my bubble. Well, not my bubble, the bubble I commandeered. And I saw on D-Scan an Omen Navy issue. And I thought to myself, no, there's no way an Omen Navy issue is going to land in my bubble. And if it does, there's no way a Thrasher... I'd have to run, right? I'd obviously have to run. And then he did land on me at 0, and I didn't run. But what I also didn't do is turn on my screen recorder. So I'm going to offer you a high fidelity reenactment. Join me back here in a second. I am building a Cynabal, piloting Torrance, the indomitable Thrasher. We're out here in Curse, camping someone else's purloined bubble. And I'm Vaji, an elite Omen Navy issue pilot from the Initiative, warping gate to gate without a care. Wait, what is this trickery? Torrance, quick, activate Scram, activate Web. You've made a terrible mistake. This is a PvP fit Omen Navy issue. Activate Warp Disruptor, fire all lasers. Torrance, orbit 500 meters. Do not touch that micro-warp drive. We must keep our signature small. Bzzzt, bzzzt, bzzzt. What? Why are my lasers missing? Torrance, his tank's still holding. Overheat the guns! Overheat the guns! Overheat! Stop overheating the guns! Haha, my tank shall never break until I run out of charges in my ancillary armor repairer. I'm gonna tell Goons about this, and then you'll be sorry! Here are my guns at 99% damage. Here's my cargo hold, and here's a kill mail. I'm so sad that I failed to capture this footage, but I can also tell you that in the moment that it happened and in the immediate aftermath, I was so strung out on adrenaline and completely flabbergasted that I was failing to make any sounds that could possibly be interpreted as words. I was just, So here we are, 15 minutes later, gotten over my disappointment of the screen recording failure, and able to look at this with some degree of serenity. What we have here are a bunch of Tech 2 mods that we're probably not going to use. Medium Capacitor Booster 2, Focused Medium Beam Laser 2. These are exactly the kind of mods. Heatsink 2s, these are exactly the kind of Tech 2 mods that we can reprocess for Morphite and for the ingredients that might let us build our Tech 2 artillery or autocannons. We also got some Tech 2 mods that we absolutely might use. Damage Control 2, yes. Multispectrum Energized Membrane 2, yes. Multistrip Coating 2, yes. Nanofiber Internal Structure 2, absolutely. And over 200 nanite repair paste. Not only did we get a medium ancillary armor rep from this kill, that also means that if we decide to build those small ancillary armor reps that we have the blueprints for, we don't even need to build the nanite repair paste for them. 216 nanite repair paste will go a long way in a frigate or destroyer. This is incredible. Thank you for stumbling into my trap, Vaji. Now, I just need to go kill something even better with my screen recorder on so that you will all forgive me. I will say that as you progress through PvP in this game, this is why it's so important that you put some effort into learning the different ships that are out there and how they're commonly fit. I didn't run because I knew that an Omen Navy issue is almost always fit with beams, micro-warp drive, warp disruptor for kiting. So I knew if he landed on me at 0 and I got into a tight orbit around him, he would never be able to track me and my scram would stop him from getting away. If it had been a Caracal Navy issue or a Scythe Fleet issue or a Stabber Fleet issue, I would have run. But an Omen Navy issue I knew was almost certainly going to be hard countered by an autocannon Thrasher. It takes some time to build up this knowledge, to see a ship on D-Scan and immediately know whether or not it's something that you might be able to tackle in the ship that you're currently flying. But over time, that knowledge will seep into even a thick skull like mine, and you'll sort of instinctively know what fights to run from and which chances to take. 6 kill marks now on Torrance the Thrasher, who apparently shall never die. Gotta try and kill this saber. He jumped. He jumped. I've got to burn out. Torrance, you did very well. That's quite a fleet. I'll accept that. Shortcut back to Pofi. Oh man, this game. This game. Woo! So it just occurred to me that I spent a lot of time earlier in this episode talking about maybe someday soon trying to build our first Tech 2 gun, but then I glossed right over it when we did in fact get our first Tech 2 gun. And you know what? We can fit it.